Hello Internet, I'm Zahn, and welcome back to a continuation of the last drawing commentary session I recorded. Continuing on from what we did last time, just as a sort of recap, I walked through the process of how I draw the Modular Core Mecha series from scratch. You can see on the screen here the piece that we drew, which doesn't have a name. I went through the entire set of steps for drawing this particular mecha piece, and just to real quickly go through what we talked about, I drew each individual section from the line work phase. We started with the body or the core of the mecha, then the head, then the left arm, the lower body, the left leg, and drew all the line work for the legs. I mirrored the left leg over the right side and then changed it slightly to fix the perspective. And then once the entire set of line work for all of the parts was done, I went through and did the color assignment. We filled down the color for each of the individual pieces. And then once that was done, we went through and we shaded everything. And that was the last step. And then we mirrored over the left arm onto the right side to get the last component of the design. Like I mentioned in the other session, which ended up running a little bit long, what I'd like to run through in this session is an explanation and sort of a walkthrough on how I use the piece-by-piece style of designs I've created here to mix and match the original cores and come up with variations, which is the whole point of the series. So what we're going to do is hide the one we just made, because we're not going to be working with this one. If it's picking up on the Photoshop recording, what I can do is go up to the top and sort of explain. The base template layer that we used, I have to adjust the opacity back to 100 so you can see it. The Brigandine, which was the very first of these designs that I ever made, has this layout. It's sort of a long-armed, basic bipedal mecha type creature. When I created its first variation, which again I haven't posted any of these so it doesn't have a name, what I did was I took the central core. That's the only real rule for the variations that I sort of put in place. They have to have the same body, upper body, the same core, but all of the other components, the head, the arms, the lower body, and the legs, were taken from other mecha designs that I created in the series. What I did was I started with the base core, and then I started copying over from other finished directories that I have in this big long list of folders, and copying the different body parts into place. Once I had their layout set up, I would go through, I'd have to deactivate all the shading layers, redo the color assignment for the variation. Usually I'll pick a color scheme that's different from the original base model, do the color assignment, and then turn all of the shading layers back on, and then alter the coloration of the shading layers to match the new color assignment, and then that's it. So to sort of demonstrate what that meant here, if we hide this variation and go to the second one, which I don't think this one's been posted yet. I've done the templates and renders for it, but it hasn't gone up on the art channel, or art site. This one I believe is called Cerise, and it has a little bit different shape than the Brigandine. Still bipedal. All of these, for the most part, with some exceptions, are going to be two-legged, two-armed mecha type designs. But for the variation, I took this unit's head and stuck it on the Brigandine's core. And then I'm not going to go down and try and figure out which ones of the later models I took the arms, lower body, and legs from. But basically, I follow this process whenever I'm doing these variations. And because I've created a whole boatload of individual units, I have a lot of options when it comes to picking and choosing. and mix and matching all the different parts creates something different. And before we get started, I think what I'll do is go and pull up my Sprite folder so I can have a reference to the other variations I've done so I don't duplicate any color palettes. I think I mentioned it in other art videos before, but one of the big challenges for doing a design series like this, which has variations and whatnot, is I'm having to carefully check what kind of color palettes I've used in the past so that I'm not just using the same color schemes, and it's getting challenging to come up with different color combinations, but that's part of the rules of the project. But what we can do, the way I have been doing the variations is I will go down the list of completed models, most of which you guys haven't seen posted anywhere because I only do these mecha uploads once every few weeks in between all the other sprites on the channel or the art site, and I've never done a video showcasing any of these, so a lot of this is probably information that no one has seen before. But if we go down to the list of completed models, I do these in order, so what I will do is first, let's see which one I left off on. I skipped ahead a little bit because there were some designs I wanted to experiment with. But it looks like number 17, core 17, which is this one, interestingly enough. This one does not have a variation yet, so for the first example in our exercise, we're going to use this one. And I don't remember, this one doesn't have a name because I haven't done the template rendering for this one, but it's probably going to be some variation of Naga, since it has a serpentine lower body. But what we can do, and I see an error I need to correct on this one. I'll have to fix that later. On the right arm, there's a gap in the highlighting on the shoulder here. This one right here will be our first test subject. What I'll do is duplicate the group. This will be designated as B since it's the first variation for Unit 17. And what we'll do is we'll expand out the folders and see what we've got to work with here. The body, the main upper body of the core, this part right here, like I mentioned at the beginning, is the only part that's going to stay consistent. Everything else is going to be swapped out with something else that's on the list here that I've created. Let's see. This one has sort of a circular opening on the body for the head, so it makes sense to have something that's going to fit in that space. And this is sort of a sneak peek for those that are watching this, since I'm going to be sort of tabbing quickly through other models trying to figure out what I want to swap in here. So you'll get a chance to get some glimpses into some of the other mecha designs that I've done, and will be posted at a later date. But let's see. And then at the same time I need to keep track from my list of completed designs, since I don't want to reuse different parts that I've used before. And let's see, we can go further down the list too. Don't necessarily have to pick from models that came before 17. In fact, it's more likely we're going to get something that I haven't used before if we skip ahead in the order. We'll hide that layer. And then let's see, this one, the head is a little bit larger, so that might not fit in the space as well. This one, I'm just looking back at the list. This one I happen to like a lot, and I don't know if I've used this one's head anywhere else. If I scroll back up, I can double check. It's actually been a while since I've done one of these mix and match exercises. I haven't done them on stream in a while. Let's see, we'll keep moving. Let's see if we can find a good replacement. Number 20. This one looks like it might be a bit tall. That might work. We can try it. What's nice about the way these different folders and individual directories for all the models are separated, it's really easy to just duplicate something and then pull it up into the folder that we're looking at and then just hide the one that we copied it out of. So let's see, we will reactivate our layer. We're going to hide the old head and this new one that we grabbed. Let's see if we can put it into a position here that's going to line up. I think that works fairly well. I thought it'd be too tall, but I guess I don't want the head all the way down here anyway. Moving it up further will be kind of a better position. It'll set it apart from the way the original looks. So that works. Now, this one. Next up, we can look for arms. And then we're gonna hide this one, and we'll actually have to look for a lower body and legs, since the original one, it has this serpent body, which is kind of unique for the series so far. This was the first one I did that looks like that. But let's see, looking at arms, we'll hide this again. This one was on the variation I showed at the beginning. The arms came from this original model. Oh, we could use this one's arms. Four digits, sort of sharp edges, and these crystal highlight things that are inset. Let me see if I've used that anywhere else. Yes, I have used these on a different variation. We'll keep looking. I could see if I've used this one's arms on anything else. Part of the challenge of doing a series this big is I don't really have an easy way to catalog what I use where. I thought about creating like a spreadsheet or something else that would explain something like this variation used this pair of arms and this one did, but that seemed like way too much work. In the end, it doesn't need to be exact. I'm not gonna lose my mind if I accidentally use an arm multiple times. It's mostly the head and the bodies I want to be a little bit wary of. So for this one, I think the arm will work. So we'll go ahead and grab the left arm directory from here. Do the same thing, duplicate it, drag it all the way down to number 17B, and we'll put it into the same hierarchy as everything else. And we can mess around with the layer hierarchy later. And we can delete the old one. This one is going to need to be on a layer above the upper body. Depending on the layout of the upper torso of the core, sometimes I'll have the arms, shoulder and arms positioned below or above. In this case, it'll look better above. Now we can go ahead and look for a lower body. The amount of variation in the lower bodies on these things is not super varied, since it's a part that doesn't really don't want to say matter, but it gets less emphasis, so I'm not as concerned about the lower body. But we can put this one on here. This one seems to match the thin proportions. I need to get in the habit of recollapsing all of my folders so that they don't take up most of the screen when I pop the directory open. But we'll do the same thing. Duplicate, move, arrange in the hierarchy the same way. I guess I don't need to keep hiding the one we're working on. It's not going to matter too much. We do. Oh, that's the wrong one. We want this one out of here. And now we can slide it into place. And then I'm not going to worry too much about the shading until the very end. That'll be the last thing we do once we have all the parts in place. But now we need to find legs. Could move down further in the hierarchy and see. This particular one, that's where the head came from. We could use the legs from this one. We'll grab the left and right legs since they are not just a mirror. If I can duplicate these both at once. Doesn't look like it. I'll duplicate each group. One at a time, then I can move them both up at the same time. We could put them here. I don't want to put them in that folder. We could delete the snake body since we won't be using that. The lower body will need to be at the bottom of the hierarchy since each of the legs will be on top of the lower body like so. Put these in place like that. And this will be our finished variation as far as the layout goes for now. Now that we have all of the pieces in place, what I'll do is go through and look at the color assignment. And it's going to get a little bit cumbersome here, but I will uncollapse all of the individual body part folders so that I can turn the shading off one by one. We're going to be jumping through all the different parts, doing the color assignment, which shouldn't take too long. But in order to do that effectively, we need the shading to be turned off. Otherwise, when we're color filling, it's going to get in the way. Okay, everything has been flattened out now, so this is what it looks like with no shading at all. And we'll start with the head. The original one was mostly green. Well, in my head I was thinking, what if we did a mix of yellow, like a base sort of muted yellow, and another color for highlight. We use this color for yellow for any sort of decorations or accent parts, like this crystal thing here on the face or these sections of the body. What if we did it kind of more turquoise-ish, light teal color? It's going to be similar to the highlights on the original body. What if we darken it up a little bit instead? And then for the eyes, let's go for purple on the eyes right now. One thing that I can sort of demonstrate once we go through and do a preliminary color assignment is how I can play with the hue and saturation sliders to get the color scheme that I like. But before I do that, we will go through and finish the rest of the color assignment. If you go with upper body, we're going to need the colors for the head first. Main body will be this color. I'm doing all this with my mouse since it's a little bit easier. I could do this with my stylus. Right now I'm working on my tablet too, but that's fine for this. Put these colors here, and then we just need the accent colors from the head. I'll switch back to the tablet, that way I get less clicking on the audio track. Alright, we'll put the teal highlights here. For the inner body section, that's going to essentially connect all the body parts. What we can do is, let's see, we could try for more pale purple shade. The inner bodies tend to work a little bit better with darker colors so they don't distract from the rest of the body parts. So that could work for the body. And we can put the head back on there. Now we'll do the arm. Could have done the arm first, that way I wasn't constantly hiding and unhiding the head. Remember that for the next one. For this part, we can do shoulder with the base green, and for the accent color, we can make the lower part of the forearm match, and then these connecting sections and the actual hand itself will have matched the inner body section. And for the claws, we could go for more bronze orange color, maybe a little bit darker, and that'll do it for the arm. Now we can move down to the lower torso. Same base green color for the parts that are connected. The highlight color for the midsection, and then for the joining parts on the hips, we use the same inner body color here. Now we can move on to the legs. Same color scheme, we use the base yellow and then the highlight color. These lower leg sections will be the same as the inner body connectors, and then for these claw-like feet, we'll have matched the claws up above. Now we just have to do that on the right leg, and then the color assignment will be done. Overall, this part of the process doesn't take terribly long. The shading is going to be a little bit more time consuming, but we'll be following the same process of doing the color fills on the existing layers. I'll sort of demonstrate that here. We'll zoom in a little bit closer so I can make sure I'm form filling all the sections accurately. Go back up to the head, the top of the hierarchy, and turn the shading layer on. We can see from the previous part we copied over, all the spots that are normally shaded on this particular one are visible. We just need to fill them down with an appropriate color that matches the new base palette. And using the paint bucket form film, that's pretty easy. We just go over all the sections and drop in the color for the shading. For the eyes, we need a darker purple. And then for the accent colors, we just need to darken up that teal shade. And that's pretty much it for the head. What I'll do is collapse the folder and start shrinking down everything here. Moving down to the arm, same deal. We grab the color that we used above, and we just quickly go through all the sections that need to be reshaded. For the inner sections, we'll go a couple shades darker, and we'll make sure that matches on the upper body once we get there. Lower section, for the claws, we can go with more of a darker brown shade. And that'll do it for the left arm. Now for the upper body, we're going to have to do some slight alteration on where the shading falls. Because the head shape is different than the original model that we copied it out of, I need to redo the shadow so it matches up with the headpiece and is accurate. And I can go ahead and slightly fill in the shading a little bit more here. Since this particular head takes up less space, I'll move the shadows up a little bit on the chest piece here. And what we can do is fill out the rest of the sections here, then do the greens. Original core model that we used was different shade of green. This is more of a, I guess, a yellow, off yellow. And then we do the accent marks. I think the shade might be too close that I can't form fill it, so I'll just do it by hand. Same on this side. And then I should do it for the upper body. We'll jump down a few layers into the lower body first for the legs. And this one's going to need to be shaded differently as well. And that's just due to the fact that the chest piece covers a different section than the one that we copied this out of. And then for the rest, we just use the form fill tool. Now we can do the inner body, which is the shading is gonna need to be fixed on the inner body too, I think. I'll just need to add a little bit of section right here so that it's a bit more symmetrical. Now we do the connecting parts at the hip. And I think I'm going to fill in this part a bit more. Now we can move on to the legs and we'll be just about done with this particular variation. Same deal here. The color highlighting on the original one we copied this off of was fairly close. Looks like the shade that we chose on this particular variation was a little bit darker. And that's fine. Now we can do feet. And I think that's good for the left side. All we have to do is repeat the same process on the right side. Overall, this particular process with the variations I think is less time consuming than drawing a brand new model from scratch. Sometimes the challenge can be making sure the color paletting and position of the different body parts looks correct. But other than that, it's just a matter of going through and filling down all the different sections like this. I'll demonstrate the slider settings that I mentioned earlier once we finish the complete piece. And that should do it for the other leg. Now we just have to copy over the left arm. Onto the right side. And it's going to be below the leg in the hierarchy. Delete the original. And using the flip horizontal command to put it into place. Now this one might look better. I was thinking it might look better above. But it looks like I'd have to redraw part of the shoulder. Let's see. I think that'll work. If we zoom out, you can take a look at the completed variation. Now the color paletting on this one I think is fine. Just looking through the list, it doesn't look like it really matches anything else that I've done so far. But what I'll do if I get to this point and turns out I've duplicated a color scheme or it looks too similar, I'll go up to the image adjustments and hue and saturation layer, and I'll just mess around with these particular sliders here and try and go with a color set that I like. And let's just say, for example, I wanted to go with this more pink color scheme for the entire thing. What I would do is write down this number or copy it and then go through each part of the design from top to bottom, from color assignment layer to highlight layer, and apply this exact same change and change the color of the whole thing. Photoshop, at least this version of Photoshop, as far as I know, doesn't have the ability to do all those at once. In other words, I can't go up to the top of the folder and adjust the hue and saturation of every single layer that's underneath it. That would be nice if I could do that for multiple layers at once, but it doesn't appear that Photoshop can do that. Maybe in later versions that's something they added, and I'll have to check. I'll be upgrading my version of Photoshop in the near future and relearning how to do everything in the new version of the software will be fun. But yeah, that that'll do it for this particular variation. The original looked like this, and the customized variation looks like this. And that's pretty much the process that I go through whenever I'm working on these. It's a little bit more tedious as I have to go through and sift through all the directories, figure out what parts I want to use, and then copy them around. But overall, it makes for a pretty easy way to experiment with all the different components. So I just wanted to run through that process real quickly. I thought about doing more than one of these, but just doing this one was almost 40 minutes, and I think the process is fairly straightforward. I don't need to run through it again. But hopefully now it's a little bit more clear about why I designed this particular series this way. And it's always interesting to try and come up with new combinations of parts. So I think that will do it for this particular session. Thanks for tuning in to these drawing videos, and I will see you guys next time.